Hello, and welcome back to our series, Optimizing Business Efficiency. My name is Brett Cernak from Tech-Tastic. Today, we're going to be talking in this episode about applying Lean Six Sigma and hyperautomation to eliminate overproduction. And we're talking about eliminating overproduction of information assets. So we will discuss in this series a bit about examples of overproduction in information assets, ways we can reduce it, and then we will also go into how we use it in our case study. So without further ado, we're going to just briefly remember that information is an asset. It's an asset because it does have a cost and a value to an organization, just like tangible assets do. It does help you generate revenue, it improves your decision making, and really gives you a very large competitive advantage. Now, additionally, to help us think of information in this asset role, we can think of it kind of the way we do with tangible assets, when we think of it like a raw material flowing through a manufacturing plant or a supply chain. And so that's the kind of mindset we want to have when we are looking at this to help us, so it's easier to picture how we can use Lean Six Sigma methodologies to improve the workflows of the information assets to reduce the costs and increase value to the information assets. So first of all, with overproduction, with information assets, it is costly for several reasons. First of all, is wasted resources. When we're overproducing, we are ending up using time, money, energy in order to produce this information or these assets that really aren't going to be utilized, or they might have a minimal value to help us. There's minimal to no value in what we're producing. It's kind of like just busy work. It's going to reduce our agility to go ahead and change and to respond to changes in the market. It's going to take us a lot longer for us to sift through all of these extra pieces of information assets. With that, it's going to reduce our efficiency. When we have too much information that's produced, it makes it very difficult for employees to go and to figure out, okay, which one is relevant, where is the true data residing. It's additional that there's more pieces that they have to sift through and spend time researching and looking at there. When we have an overproduction of information assets, there's too many information assets going on. That also means that we have to protect those to reduce our risk, which means that we are increasing our risk of a data breach. So by limiting what we have, we're also limiting how much exposure or how much potential risk we have with that. This does also increase our storage costs. Now, granted, I understand that storage is rather inexpensive, but we also have to think of this as it's also increased transportation costs as well, which we'll get into transportation in a later episode of this. So with this, it's going to increase our storage costs. It's going to increase our need for backups. It's going to increase our need for bandwidth in order to maintain these extra information assets that really are not providing any true value for us. And then additionally, this gets a little bit back into our reduced agility and our wasted resources, but it's going to be really difficult to do some data analysis on this, because again, we're not going to be able to really find what the true data is. It's going to be really difficult to perform an accurate data analysis, because we're going to have a lot of data that's duplicate or that's just completely irrelevant. That's going to really make us skew the results. So some examples of overproduction in information assets. So the biggest one is generating excessive reports. These are reports that we're creating that really no one's going to see, or they're non-essential, or maybe if they do have anything essential to them, we're maybe only pulling out one little part of that report that we're generating to put into another report, which leads us to duplicate information. Well, we have multiple copies when we have of the same information, the same files even, it's going to result in overproduction. We have unnecessary documents. Again, creating and storing documents that are not really required for the business or won't be truly used or utilized is overproduction of information assets. Excessive data collection. So this I've seen many times where people want more and more information. They're bringing in, they're pulling it from different sources, they're getting it. They might be buying it, whatever it might be. They're just keep collecting and absorbing it, except they're not really doing anything with this information. So that is just a big waste and overproducing of the collection of it. It's almost similar to overbuying too many raw materials that you're never going to use, or you have no plans to produce or to improve on. Unused software or tools. This is another big one. I've seen it before where people will go out and they'll purchase the software or they'll purchase a tool and they will only use a small fraction of it, or they won't even use it at all. They thought it would be good, thought it would be great. It's a SaaS solution, so they're paying a monthly maintenance fee on it, and they forget about it, and they forget that they are paying on it, and so it just sits there kind of dormant. And this is another example of an overproduction of information assets. This also creates overcomplicated processes. When we create an overcomplicated process, too many steps for it, the information processing or the management of it will create a overproduction, because we are doing too many things that really aren't adding enough value to it. So those are some examples of overproduction in information assets. So ways to reduce it, or eliminate even, which will show you how we eliminated it in our case study, overproduction in information assets. So prioritize. That's a huge one. We want to only prioritize the information, and we minimize the creation of unnecessary information. We also work on process improvement. We do a value map or a production map, some people call it that, to a process map, to really look to see how this is flowing through and to manage it, and to see when we're creating files, when we're creating emails. If we're creating too many emails, that is another form of overproduction of information assets. We have data governance policies to control the collection, storage, and use of the data information. Automation. We're going to use hyperautomation to automate information-intensive tasks and reduce the manual creation of unnecessary information. And we're going to show you that exactly what we're talking about here in the case study on how we manage to really automate some of this information-intensive task, and we managed to remove several files from being created ever. Standardization. We're going to have a standardized process and tools for information processing. When you have a standardization, that kind of goes back to our process improvement, but we should always be doing a process improvement, a continually process improvement to reduce the overproduction. With our data analysis, we're going to try to identify when we're creating files and make sure that we're able to use the insights for them. And we're going to also be checking to see with that data analysis if we're creating unnecessary information or files that are not being utilized. And then, of course, training. Really to provide training to employees. Ideally, I like to see employees trained on Lean Six Sigma to have the mindset to start to think of ways that they can reduce this creation of it, and to always be looking for ways to add value rather than to just do busy work, and to just help them understand too the really importance to reduce overproduction of information assets. Again, it's one of those things that is a lot of people don't realize, because if unfortunately storage has gotten so inexpensive that people just keep collecting, and really we want to limit it because later on, you're going to have an employee or someone have to go back and reference that information or get it for a customer, whatever it might be. It's going to be a huge time waste. And that's where we're going to get into the inventory management of information assets in a later one. So we worked with a client who is a manufacturer. They make several different products. They have a regular product line, and then they also do have a product line which they fabricate in an item for a specific industry. And with this, the quotes have to be kind of custom made. Think of it as if you're kind of selecting options on a car. Each one's kind of built out in that way. And so the customer was saying that it just seemed like it was taking a long time for them to create these quotes. So I asked the management what the process would be. And this is the process they gave us. I'm just going to take you through it. If you've seen some of our previous sessions, this will become familiar to you. So the customer will do a request. We'll have a email or phone conversation with the sales rep, which will then confirm the receipt. And then we have the rest of these options processes, steps are broken up into swim lanes. So everything in this lane right here is for the sales rep, everything in this lane is for the drafter, and everything in this lane is for the customer. Now, this drafter is also a customer service rep who seconds as a drafter. Their primary job is really a customer service rep, but they do need to create AutoCAD files for the sales rep from time to time. So the sales rep will then send an email off to this drafter and create an email and send it off. The drafter will then go ahead and create a AutoCAD file, and then we'll put it into a quotation form for the sales rep and then send it right on back to the sales rep, who will then send it off to our customer, who will then have 60 days to respond on the quote. So that's the process that the customer's view was of the whole process. We went ahead then and sat down with the sales rep and the drafter to discuss this and find out their methods, which we will see here. So you will see that this is a bit more than what the management had originally viewed here. So after talking with the sales rep and the drafter, we came up with this process map of what is actually happening with the quotation. We had to fit this all on the screen for you. We had to kind of turn this sideways for you. And so our swim lanes are now going horizontally. So the customer is all going to be here. Sales reps all going to be here for his processes. And then the drafter for his or her process is all going to be right up here. So the sales rep is going to go ahead and email the drafter the specs and send them off to the drafter. The drafter is going to then check to see, are the specs understood? If they're not, then it's going to trigger the drafter to immediately send an email off to the sales rep for clarification on this and bring us right back. Now, if it is clearly understood, the drafter will then check for a template in AutoCAD to see if there already is a template that they can use to save out some time here. If there's not, they have to create a new AutoCAD kind of from scratch. There's a lot of different options here. They try to find one that already has most of the options already put in there, but if they don't find one, they do have to build it out from scratch. And then it takes about an hour and 25 or 1 hour and 15 minutes to do. If there already is one, it takes about a half hour to do this, to create a file from the template. They then have to save that template, or that file, I should say, and copy and paste that image into the quotation form. And then from there, they then the quotation form is then created and saved, and they're going to email that quotation form to the sales rep. So then the sales rep is going to get it and going to review it, which then will check over if the draft image and the form are correct. If not, it's going all the way back here, and we're starting all the way back over from start, unfortunately. If it is correct, though, they're going to calculate the price from the price sheet manually, add the information of the price sheet and any other customer information they need to the quotation form. that was sent by the drafter over here and create a new one. They're going to then, or resave it. Then they're going to create an email to send to the customer. And now the customer receives a quote and has 60 days to respond. Now we're talking a bit about overproduction here. So with that, we are going to calculate this out as to how much they are actually costing them in overproduction with this process. So if we're going to assume the hourly labor cost is $30 an hour, and we're going to break down the overproduction of labor per quote. So the average labor all the way through with no errors, no rework, is 2.13 hours. The average cost of overproduction, which overproduction is, we're talking about actually creating supporting files for this, so is about 0.63 hours approximately. So we have a few of them in here that we're talking about. We're having this extra email. If we hyper automate it, this is an email that's just not really needed. Quite frankly, this email kind of isn't either. We have a quotation form. This AutoCAD file is being created. We don't need that. We don't need this email either when we hyper automate. So these are all things that are just, they're not really adding any value. If we really look at it, they're just there just to support this whole thing and to just send to help transport information. And now we have all these files that have to be sifted through and managed through and such. So we're going to take you through in the next slide about the hyperautomation as to how we cut all these out here. So the overcost of this, so we have 0.633 hours. If we actually add this up, we'll come up with somewhere around 0.7, but we do have to subtract out the 10% motion factor in here, which we'll get into in a later video. So that's how we get the 0.63 hours. And so our cost of overproduction, producing these extra files that really don't add any value to the quote itself, is $18.90 a quote. So now that adds up pretty quickly here. And we're looking at $9,752 a year in just producing files that we really don't have to produce, and that people really aren't going to look at it right after they're created. And for whatever reason, they're also being saved in the system. So that means they have to be protected. They have to be backed up. They need extra storage. We need extra management on it. So we're not even including those costs in it that have to happen. So a few of our additional costs on here that we're talking about is the sales are spending, because they're doing about 10 quotes a week, they're spending about 3.6 hours a week on just overproducing of these emails and resaving these forms. The customer service is spending 2.7 hours a week on overproduction of files. So we have a lot of missed opportunities here for staff working on overproduction instead of really adding value to the quote and to the customer. So now when we went ahead and did the quotation process with hyperautomation and we redid it, we actually went ahead and we simplified this a lot more. First of all, you'll notice right away, we're back to the vertical swim lanes, by the way. You'll notice that there is a person missing already. We don't have the drafter here already. We're able to eliminate them. So we have the customer service request or the customer request, the email or phone, the sales rep in here. The sales rep is going to confirm their receipt from the customer's request. They're going to enter into a form the specs online and submit them right online. This is going to take them 0.1 of an hour. They're then going to go ahead, and this hyperautomation is going to automatically create the engineering image, calculate the price, add the information to the form with the price and the engineering image to the quote, create and saves the file to the correct location and displays the file to the sales rep for review. It's only creating one file, not all those additional ones that we talked about, those extra emails and the AutoCAD file and a couple other things. So then the sales rep can go ahead and, after it's displayed, it's going to immediately check to see is the draft image correct and the form correct. So if they accidentally type something in incorrectly, they can immediately go back and resubmit it. If it is correct, they're going to create an email. This client did want an email to come personally from the sales rep versus having the system generated. They wanted that extra touch there. We could go ahead if we wanted to and have it automatically there once the sales rep says yes, this is approved, but they really did want it that way, so that's okay. They want that extra human touch between the sales rep and the customer, and it's completely understandable. So they'll create an email and send it off to the customer with the attached file. And again, the customer has 6 days to respond. So with this, we've really eliminated quite a bit of overproduction here of files. So the hourly cost now is $30 an hour. Again, so we have completely eliminated the overproduction of information assets that are required to do this. So the new cost of overproduction to the quote is just, it's free, it's $0 because it doesn't exist. So that means it's costing us nothing more. So additional value we have created in the cost reductions is now the sales rep has an additional 3.6 hours available per week that they can use to network. They can use to build that customer relationship. They can use it for another sales meeting. 3.6 hours that's a nice chunk of time that I'm sure a sales rep would appreciate to be calling on their clients. The customer service rep has an additional 2.7 hours available per week. So now they're able to better service your customers. We also are going to increase our win rates because now customers are getting their quotes back right away. So they're able to make those decisions and come back. You also have the sales rep going back, and with that extra time, they're able to follow up on those much easier. So we also, as we discussed, we have less information and assets to track and manage and protect. So our reduced overproduction costs in just these manual labor costs alone, we are saving $9,752 in savings annually a year. This also opens us up to a lot of new opportunities for hyperautomation. So because we now have a system for it, we're now able to build on the system even further and to get an improved quality of data so that we can even generate some reports out of this or start to automate some reports so we can automatically detect any errors or inconsistencies that are happening in the quotes and have those immediately corrected. We can also see what's really happening with it, which leads us over to our enhanced insights and analysis. We're going to be able to quickly process large amounts of data that in the past, if we tried to do it manually, it was impossible to near impossible to do. We're going to get better decision making. We're going to get real-time information back to us that the sales reps would be able to see what's happening with those quotes and really be able to address those as quickly as possible. And then again, this is going to increase our scalability. So now if we add sales rep, it doesn't mean we also have to add more time to a drafter to get this done. We can scale that right away for you. So if you're ready to start your digital transformation by leveraging your technology, please go ahead and go to sixsigma.tech-tastic.com. There you'll be able to set up a meeting where we can discuss further on your processes and how we can leverage technology to really help you out. Now, in our next video series, we're going to talk about the reduction of movement by using Lean Six Sigma and hyperautomation.